Hello and welcome to the Aussie Football Passport, your one-stop pod for updates on your favourite Aussie men and women who are playing their club careers abroad. I'm your host, Alex, and whilst there is no national team action to bring you, there is silverware, goals, assists, yellow cards, and a red card to bring you this week. So you will not leave this episode disappointed, I promise. All that and some final league matches before the winter breaks begin in Europe. Let's get straight into it with the headlines. This week, we start with a transfer, a bit of a surprise transfer, in fact, and it is Chloe Berryhill, formerly Chloe Lagazzo, who has signed with the Western Sydney Wanderers in the A-League Women's. Now, of course, that's technically not an Aussie abroad story. However, she did leave Como 1907 in Italy after a frustrating stint with minimal game time. The move is designed to get her in front of Joe Montemurro, the Matildas coach, with an Asian Cup spot up for grabs, but more on that soon. Chloe also dropped a bit of a bombshell in her post-match interview after her debut with the Western Sydney Wanderers at the weekend, saying she will retire at the end of the season. She will be focusing on family life with her wife and hoping to start a family. So congratulations to Chloe, but she has some unfinished business to do in the A-League Women's and hopefully in a green and gold jersey as well. Now, there is a bit of a sad start to the injury news for this week's episode, where Brisbane Roar have confirmed that Tamika Yallop will be sidelined for an extended period after sustaining a significant hamstring injury in last weekend's game against Adelaide United. So you will remember, if you listened to last week's episode, that we mentioned that Tamika had looked like she had injured herself quite seriously, considering her reaction, and it has now been confirmed. She's had multiple consultations with leading medical specialists, and they have determined that surgery is required. She has undergone the knife earlier this week, and it means that she will be back, hopefully, for the A-League Women's final series for Brisbane Roar, but it means that she will be ruled out for the Asian Cup. So devastating news for Tamika, and our thoughts are with her. It does now open up a spot in that Matildas squad, you'd imagine. So let's see what happens there. Now, speaking of Matildas, Mary Fowler is expected to return in the new year from her ACL rehabilitation at Manchester City. So we will keep you updated on that one, of course. Once we get more news, of course, the WSL is winding up for the winter break, but more on that later in the show. Harry Souttar has returned to full training with his side Leicester City in some very timely and positive news, not only for his club side, but also for the Socceroos. It hopefully means he will be back on the playing pitch very soon, considering the condensed fixtures of the English Championship. So we will, of course, let you know once he does. Now, speaking of fellow centre-backs, Alessandro Ciccati is due back in a couple of weeks' time for Parma, according to Transfer Market. They have his return date down as the 29th of December, and we wait with bated breath for Alessandro's return to Parma, of course. All right, well, that is it for the headlines. Short and sweet this week, but we will move on to the weekly wrap shortly. All right, let's start the weekly wrap in USA with our ladies. Morgan Aquino played the full game in goal for DC United in their 2-2 draw with Lexington. The result keeps them in 8th position, which is 5 points from the playoffs. So all the best to Morgan and her teammates. Now to England, where Kyra Cooney-Cross and Steph Catley both started and played the full game for Arsenal in their 1-0 win over FC Twente in Champions League action. Caitlin Ford came on as a second-half substitute and played 33 minutes. At the weekend, we had our first of the Aussie derbies in WSL, which, of course, occurs regularly considering there is only 12 teams in the WSL. That will, of course, change for next season to 14. Just a little side notes there if you were wondering. But anyway, back to the game. Arsenal took on Everton, and Arsenal came out victors winning that game 3-1. All four of our Aussies started this one. However, only Caitlin Ford and Kyra Cooney-Cross played the full game, as Steph Catley played 81 minutes, which is rare for her to get substituted, but, good to see her getting a rest. Claire Wheeler played 59 minutes for Everton on the losing side, unfortunately. And Caitlin Ford, well, she thought she had scored the second goal for Arsenal in the game. However, it was awarded to Alessia Russo, who made mention in her post-match interview that her and Caitlin can share the goal if they'd like, but I'm sure Caitlin probably doesn't want that. She'd prefer it to be in her name, and Alessia probably the same, but being polite there in the interview. Anyway, moving right along to Chelsea, who handed out an absolute hiding to AS Roma. The final score was 6-0. Sam Kerr started and played 69 minutes for Chelsea and picked up an assist, whilst her fellow countryman Ellie Carpenter was an unused substitute in that one. Winona Heatley started and played the full game for Roma in a tough day for her side. Winona at the weekend did not play for her club side. She remained on the bench. Now, back to Chelsea, where at the weekend they played in the WSL and backed up that emphatic win with another win and clean sheet. This time it was against Brighton and Hove Albion. The score was 3-0 in that one. Lee Carpenter started and played the full game, while Sam Kerr came on at halftime and provided another assist in a very productive week for Sam. Great to see her finding her feet and getting some good minutes and some end product as well. Charlie's Rule played 24 minutes as a second half substitute for Brighton in that one. Katrina Gorry started and played the whole game for West Ham in their 2-2 draw with Liverpool in the bottom of the table clash. Both sides will be looking to go back to the drawing board as they plot a way out from the bottom position. Now, just going back to that point I made earlier about the WSL expanding to 14 teams next year. So last place typically would get relegated from the WSL, and the winner of the WSL 2 league would automatically get promoted. But because they're expanding to the 14 teams, it means that last place will actually play off against third place to secure a spot in the WSL for next season. So it shouldn't be all doom and gloom. However, you don't want to be down that end of the table, do you? Let's be quite honest about that. Now, Leicester City defeated London City Lionesses. That's a bit of a mouthful, 1-0. Emily Van Egmond started and played the full game for Leicester, whilst Alana Kennedy was not in the matchday squad for London City. Claire Hunt started and played the full game for Tottenham in their 3-3 draw with Manchester United. Charlotte Grant remained sidelined with injury. And as I made mention of earlier in the show, the WSL will now take a winter break and will return on the 10th of January for a well-earned break for our ladies. So all the best, put your feet up and recover for the second half of the WSL season. Now to Germany, where Hayley Rasso was a second half substitute for Eintracht Frankfurt in their 5-3 loss to FC Nuremberg. She played 23 minutes in that one. She was again a second half substitute in the 86th minute this time around in her side's weekend game against Union Berlin, which they drew 2-2. Jamila Rankin, she started and played the full match for Hoffenheim as they were defeated 3-2 by Red Bull Leipzig, or RB Leipzig, depending on whether you want to mention the major sponsor / owner's name or not. But I guess we're not the ABC, are we? So we can say it. All right, now to Italy to round out our women's action for this week. Sassuolo head into the winter break in Italy with a much-needed 1-0 win over Genoa. Jessica Nash helped her side to keep a clean sheet as she started and played the full game in defence, while Jacinta Galabadaracci started and played 73 minutes on the left wing. The Serie A Femminile will return on the weekend of the 19th of January, so they will get a little bit longer than the WSL ladies there. All right, that is it for the women. Let's head over to the men's side of things, and we'll start in the championship, where Nestor Irankunda came off the bench at halftime as Watford drew 1-1 with Sheffield United in midweek action. He did not make it off the bench in Watford's game at the weekend. Another 1-1 draw this time with Wrexham, just in case you were wondering. Callum Elder played 85 minutes for Derby County in a 1-1 draw with Millwall in their midweek game. He did not make it off the bench in their game on Monday night. Now, Cameron Burgess played the full match for Swansea City against Portsmouth as they won 1-0 in that midweek fixture. Hayden Matthews started and played 87 minutes while Adrian Segicic came off the bench in the 70th minute for Portsmouth. Cameron Burgess then played the full game for his side on Saturday. This time, however, they lost 2-1 to Stoke City. Hayden Matthews then backed up at the weekend, playing 93 minutes for Portsmouth in their 2-1 win over Blackburn on Sunday. Lewis Miller played the full game for Blackburn, while Adrian Segicic was an unused substitute for Portsmouth in that one. Now, going back to midweek and Blackburn, where Lewis Miller also played a full game in their 1-1 draw with Oxford United. Now, Riley McGree, he's in red hot form because not only did he play 73 minutes, he scored his side's opening goal and set up their second as Middlesbrough beat Charlton 2-1 in midweek action. Sam Silverware came on after 68 minutes in that game. Then at the weekend, Riley McGree backed it up, playing 64 minutes as Middlesbrough ran out 3-1 winners, this time over QPR. Sam Silverware came off the bench in the 83rd minute for Middlesbrough, and Daniel Benny was an unused substitute for QPR. Now, let's drop down a division to League One, where Alex Robertson played 81 minutes for Cardiff City in a 1-0 win over Stevenage FC in midweek action. He then played 65 minutes for Cardiff City on Sunday in a 4-3 win over Doncaster. And Cardiff are now top of League One and absolutely flying. So great to see that Alex Robertson is playing his part in his side's push to get promoted back to the Championship, where they were, of course, last season. Rafael Borges Rodriguez played the full game and scored a goal for Wigan Athletic in their 1-1 draw with Huddersfield Town. Tyrese Francois was not in the matchday squad. Now let's head to Scotland, where Nicholas Milanovic and Kasuni Yengi both came off the bench in the 65th minute for Aberdeen in their Conference League match on Thursday night, where they lost 1-0 to Strasbourg. Nick Suman was an unused substitute. Cameron Devlin played 87 minutes for Hearts in a 2-0 win over Falkirk at the weekend. This means that Hearts maintained their position at the top of the league table in Scotland. So well done to Hearts there. But the season is well and truly not over. So I'm sure there are a few more twists and turns for Cameron Devlin and his teammates there. Now to Motherwell, where Apostolos Stamatolopoulos came on in the 73rd minute as Motherwell drew 0-0 with Dundee United. Johnny Kutrumba started and played 72 minutes at left back, whilst Oscar Priestman remained on the bench for Motherwell. For Dundee United, Ryan Strain started and played the full game, and Zach Sapsford started and played 72 minutes. Now, in some interesting news after that game, Motherwell's coach was sacked. So it will be interesting to see if that affects our three Aussies at Motherwell in terms of their playing minutes or positions. We will, of course, keep you updated in the coming weeks. Now, Livingston played out an absolute mad 2-2 draw with Dundee. Tete Yengi was a late substitute, playing 9 minutes in total, but he scored the equaliser. It was a pretty easy goal. And in fact, the Dundee goalkeeper came out and apologised afterwards for his mistake. So, look, Tete will take them however they can come, as any striker would. As for Ryan McGowan, well, he started, but he got a red card in what was a sacrificial move for his team to stop a potential match-winning goal from Dundee. He played 89 minutes before receiving that red card late on in that one. Rounding out the action in Scotland on Monday night, local time, was Rangers defeating Hibs 1-0. Jack Iredale played the full game at centre-back, and Martin Boyle came on as a 69th minute substitute in the hope that Hibs could salvage something from the game. However, that was not to be the case, and Martin Boyle was unable to continue his form from earlier in the season with a goal or an assist for his side in that one. All right, let's head to Germany, where Jackson Irvine played another full game, whilst Connor Metcalf came off the bench in the 96th minute as St. Pauli picked up a much-needed 2-1 win over FC Heidenheim at the weekend to move out of the relegation zone. Now to Spain, where Matt Ryan's Levante were due to play on Monday evening against Villarreal. However, due to a large storm, this game was postponed. Our Mobile had an eventful game as his side Castellon beat Mirandes 3-1 in the Spanish second division. Our started, played the full 90 minutes, and during that time he managed to provide an assist for his side's first goal of the match and get himself a yellow card on the stroke of half-time. However, it is good times for Castellon, who have put together 5 back-to-back wins and are now within striking distance of the promotion places in the second division there in Spain. So fantastic news. Now to the Netherlands, where Jordan Boss was a second half substitute, making an instant impact by grabbing an assist in his side's 4-3 Europa League defeat against Football Club FCSB. He was at fault for one of the goals, however, and it was not exactly what Coach Robin van Persie wanted, but they will look to regroup. And they did just that, but unfortunately not in a positive way, because he then played at the weekend coming on in the 64th minute, Jordan Boss that is, as Feyenoord lost 2-0 to Ajax in Dutch league action. Continuing with domestic Dutch football, Aden Hustic played a full game for Heracles Almelo in a 4-3 loss to league leaders PSV Eindhoven. Max Ballard played a full game for NAC Breda in their 1-1 draw with FC Utrecht. Now to Austria, where Marco Tilio came on in the 77th minute for Rapid Wien in a 1-1 draw with FC Blau-Weiß Linz. Now, in some very positive news, Jed Drew returned for his side Hartberg, playing 25 minutes as a second half substitute in their 2-1 win over WSG Tyrrell. So fantastic stuff to see Jed Drew back on the pitch. He was firing quite well before he picked up that injury, which was very unfortunate to see. Now to Serbia, where Miloš Degenek started and played the full game for his side TSC Baka Topola as they drew 0-0 with Red Star Belgrade. Not only did he help his side keep a clean sheet against their much fancied opponent, but in true defensive linchpin style, he got himself a yellow card. Well done, Miloš. We are very proud of you, mate. All right, now to the Czech Republic or Czechia. Garan Quol came off the bench in the 84th minute for Sparta Prague in their 2-1 win over CS Universita Craiova in Conference League action in midweek. He was an unused substitute at the weekend in Czech League action. All right, that is it for the weekly wrap. Next up, we will do Players of the Week and wrap up this week's episode. Players of the Week. Let's start with our Women's Player of the Week. It is Alex Chidiac. She finally broke her duck for a new club, FC Como, scoring their only goal in a heavy 3-1 loss to Fiorentina. While she won't be happy with her team's result, on a personal level, it'll be great news and will hopefully remind Joe Montemuro of her talents. Rather good timing, of course, considering the unfortunate injury to Tamika Yallop, of course, which opens up that extra spot in the Matildas Asian Cup campaign next year. Unfortunately, Alex Chidiac will have to wait a couple of weeks before her side is back in action, of course, with that winter break for the Serie A Femminile. But nonetheless, congratulations, Alex. A personal favourite of mine and definitely a player that you should be keeping an eye on. Now to our Men's Player of the Week. There were plenty of goal scorers I could have given it to this week. Some ones that helped out with clean sheets as well, but it had to go to Keanu Bacchus, who not only played a full game, he provided an assist as he helped his side St Mirren beat Celtic 3-1 in the Scottish League Cup final and win the first trophy in over a decade. So congratulations to Keanu Bacchus and his teammates at St Mirren there with that one. In case you're wondering, definitely worth checking out, and one we have shared on social media, I believe. The assist was a corner routine straight from the training park, and just fantastic stuff. Another player that should surely be on the radar for Tony Popovic and the Socceroos coming into the World Cup. Keanu, he hasn't quite hit the same form that he did at St Mirren in his previous stint, but he's definitely got all the talent, and on set-piece duties there at St Mirren will certainly help the cause. And I think that position next to Jackson Irvine is still up for grabs. So Keanu, keep up your good form and you might be getting a call from Tony Popovic. Well, can you believe it? That is it for another week of the Aussie Football Passport. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The website is now live and I'll put the link in the show notes. So make sure you go and check it out. I'll also share it on social media for you as well. While you're there, let me know if you'd like a couple of bonus episodes as a thank you for sticking with me for, can you believe it, over 30 episodes already. Maybe a Socceroos Year in Review pod and a Matildas Year in Review pod. What do you reckon? I'll leave it with you. Get in touch via social media or email and I'll get to work. All right. Thanks for listening and I'll catch you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.